Hey guys, Naeem Matraman here again, and today is now day 10 of the blog series that I'm doing on my book, Praying for Peace, A Journey to Serenity. I'm going to cover chapter 10 today and maybe chapter 11 too. Although when I was writing the book, it felt like there was a lot of detail. I think that in describing it, a lot of it was kind of a blur, and a lot of it is detail-oriented that expresses better being read than me talking about it. So, let's see. Hopefully I'll get both of them in today. So when we last left off, I had just failed out of my third college and had just about run out of options when I got the opportunity again to be a firefighter in my hometown of Montclair. I jumped at it. I had been doing a lot of drinking and a lot of weed smoking up until that point. I was still drinking, but I quit smoking weed. I knew there was going to be a drug test in the preliminary stages of getting on the job. So I had to take a psychological exam, a physical exam, different than the first physical, which was actually a test, like a physical test. Whereas this was, it was an exam. It was blood test and heart and blood pressure and all that kind of stuff, and a drug test. So stopped smoking weed. And psychological exam, all that other stuff, and I got cleared and sworn in on October 25th, 2002. I became a probationary firefighter. And there's another swearing in a year later, which is like the official, but, as long as I didn't screw it up, I was going to be the first black female firefighter in Montclair's history. So the next step was to go to the fire academy. So for the next 6 weeks, what I basically did, I woke up in the morning. I had a dog at the time that I really wasn't taking care of. Got dressed, went to the police headquarters, which is also fire headquarters. They issued me a vehicle. I had to drive about half an hour to the fire academy. I would leave an hour early, though, because of traffic. But I went by myself. A lot of times when people come on, there's more than one person, but I was brought on by myself, so I had to do that kind of alone. And it's weird because two guys were put on 4 months later, and I've always kind of wondered why they didn't just put us on together, because that it made me have to go through the fire academy alone. And for somebody that already felt different in so many ways, and I was the only female there, and I didn't know anybody, and I was already kind of a recluse, so I struggled my way through it. I did all right. The people were nice enough, but I ate lunch by myself every day, and I learned a lot. We did a lot of classroom stuff. There was a lot to learn about firefighting. People think you just kind of like just run into the building and drag people out and spray water, and there's really a lot to it. So I learned a lot. We had they simulated fires. We had they'd set hay on fire inside of concrete buildings, and they had a fire hydrant for us to open up and hook up and get some hands-on practice. There were 2 sections. The first 4 weeks was firefighter 1, and then there was firefighter 2, which was 2 weeks, and that was more advanced stuff like hazardous materials, dealing with that, and car extrications, things that were kind of like the secondary duties of that end up falling under firefighting. I think some car fires and stuff. So I got on a job in I think December. I want to say December 13th was my first day as a firefighter, and from that point on, I started working 24-hour shifts. We worked 24 hours on and 72 hours off, and everybody was nice to me. I wasn't the first female. There were 2 other women, although one was now a fire inspector. There was me and another one on a line, and but they didn't work the same shifts as me, so I was the only female on my shift. But again, the guys were nice. I had a lot of fun. These were some funny guys, and they were also very kind to me and taught me a lot. And I can't say that I experienced any discrimination. I don't know of the experiences of the women that came on before me, but except for my own personal insecurities, there was really no reason for me to feel uncomfortable there. Although the fire department was an incredible blessing for me. I was about to move to Florida to be a bartender. it was also a curse because I worked 24 hours on, 72 hours off. So I worked from 8 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then I was off for 3 days. And I mean, during the basketball season, I coached, but if it wasn't basketball season, those 3 days, I didn't have to do anything else. I wasn't in school. I wasn't working a second job. I didn't have to. Still living at my father's house, paying zero rent. You know, driving around in banged up used cars that didn't have car payments, and all my money was going smoking and drinking. And I started running around in some of the worst neighborhoods that New Jersey had to offer. I mean, especially, Essex County, there's a bunch of just ghetto on top of ghetto, and, East Orange, Irvington, Newark. There's a lot of rough areas, and somehow I found my way to them. And, I was hanging out with friends that I knew from Montclair, but they were now, there. And so at this point I was hanging out in East Orange a lot, and on my days off I went, because of my schedule and because I was an alcoholic, I got off at 8 o'clock and I was already drinking by, liquor. I was like itching, waiting for the liquor store to open at 9, and I was drunk by like 11, 12 o'clock, and I was hanging out, and all I wanted to do was drink, smoke weed, and play cards. And I was living like a double life, twice a week I was this public servant, and I had the admiration and respect of a lot of people that I grew up around, that watched me grow up in the town where my father was a teacher and my mother worked for the township, and I had siblings that played sports, and I was this upstanding, member of society, and then, even a small grade celebrity. But on my days off, man, I went to the hood, and, I hid and crawled in a bottle and put myself in really dangerous situations. I started dating somebody in East Orange, and my father bought me a car, used cars, a Pontiac Grand Am. It was a stick shift, so I learned how to drive a stick. And I was going to pick this girl up from work, but I was drunk. The car wasn't registered yet, and I was driving like 80 miles an hour in a 40 mile per hour zone. And I got pulled over, and, the cop was nice to me because I told him I was a firefighter, but he still had the car towed. And what he did do, he didn't hit me with a DWI, and he took me to pick her up from where she was, and then he brought me back to my house, and we were in a different town, so that was pretty nice. But 2 weeks later, I was hanging out in East Orange every day, and that night the girl was really upset. She was already concerned about my drinking, and so she broke it off that night, and that hurt. I really liked her, but that turned out to be a blessing too. 2 weeks later, I was on a trip down south, and I got rear-ended. The car got totaled, and that was the end of that car, and I was back to not having any transportation. And about a week later, I was hanging out with a friend of mine. We were in the pharmacy, and she got a phone call, and I could hear it in her voice, that sound that I've become so used to, people dying in my life. And I just walked over, and I was, who is it now? And it was a guy named Thud, and his real name was Flynn, and but everybody called him Thud. And when I was hanging out in East Orange, I was hanging out with two twin sisters that were actually my younger sister's age. And I was very good friends with their older sister. And so I was hanging out a lot over there, and they lived in two different apartments, and Thud was the boyfriend of one of those two. And, I was kind of close to the whole circle and the girl that I was dating was in that circle too. And so when she broke it off, I stopped hanging out over there because I was all hurt and everything. And something had happened that day. Earlier that day, there was an altercation, and now it was late August night. I believe it was August 21st. And it was hot outside, and, a lot of people didn't have air conditioning, so they were just outside hanging out. And somebody that was involved in that altercation from earlier came back with a sawed-off shotgun and sprayed the whole block with bullets. And a 4-year-old girl was killed. Thud dove to save another little girl, which he did do successfully, but in turn, gave his life. And so again, her breaking up with me was a blessing, because the chances are that I would have been out there. I was out there every night. I stayed there till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning if I didn't spend the night, like every night, and it was bad enough. I was staggering out of those apartments at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning when there were, drug dealers and crackheads and everything on every corner. And it's amazing I wasn't robbed at the very least leading up to the time that I stopped hanging out there. But if she didn't break it off with me, I would have been out the minute. I would have. That's what I did. For a couple of the months that we were dating, I was there every night, and I would have been out there with them. And who knows what would have happened. So that was difficult, and it wasn't the only death that I had experienced recently, but it was one where I felt like I had almost literally dodged a bullet. This just added to my drinking and added to my depression, and as this happened, things started to get worse for me at work because I was starting to lose weight. I was coming to work hungover all the time. I was getting to the point where I was so addicted to alcohol. The only way I could sleep was when I was drinking. I didn't sleep well when I was at work. And if I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning on a day where I had to be to work at 8, I would take a shot. I would take a shot or two so I could go back to sleep. I mean, I came in, it wasn't just coming out my pores. I smelled like alcohol. I was breathing it. A lot of times I was in the bathroom throwing up. I almost ran a fire engine into a telephone pole once on the call. I hadn't checked the brakes the way I was supposed to, and the brakes, what they call it, a Jake brake or an engine brake. There's 3 levels to it, and it should be at high when you're driving a fire truck through a residential area. And I didn't check it, and it didn't apply when I needed it to, and I had to literally stop with lights and sirens, 6 inches from a telephone pole in the middle of an intersection, and back up to make this turn. And I mean, I was falling apart, and things were getting harder and harder for me at work. My boss at the time, the head of my shift, was not making things any easier on me. He didn't particularly care for me, and he wasn't shy about that. So between the depressive issues that I had that I never got counseling for, the insecurities that I had, it seemed like constant heartbreaks that I was dealing with. I was running through a bunch of different girls, and it wasn't my intention. I was looking to settle down with a bunch of people that I just apparently wasn't good enough for in one form or another. I felt largely insufficient at work. I didn't have a passion for firefighting, but what was I going to do? I'd failed out. I lost 2 scholarships. I'd failed out of college. The third one. This job had saved me from moving to Florida to be a bartender, and I didn't have enough college credits to even be a substitute teacher or to get paid for my efforts as a basketball coach. So, I was trapped in what I was doing. I felt like suffocated, but I didn't know how to get out. I sucked at what I did, but who walks away from a job like that? And even if I did, then what am I going to do? And all that did was feed my drinking. So, I don't know. It was a vicious cycle, and it only got worse and worse. But I didn't think I had a problem. Like I mentioned, I think a little earlier, I could always find somebody that liked to drink just as much as I did, and as long as that was the case, I didn't have a problem. And but that was going to change soon, and I'll go into that in the next blog, chapter 11. But I was getting to a breaking point. But even that was the first of many breaking points because I'm really, really, really hard-headed. So once I got to one breaking point, that was just the beginning of a bunch of breaking points before I got it. But I guess the point of all my story, and when I get to the end of everything, is the fact that I did get it. I did, because I was willing to keep trying through an incredible amount of pain and discomfort. And sometimes it's got to get dark before it gets light, But we'll get to that soon. Take care.